I've had the Skypad 3.0 XL for 4 weeks, and this is a review of that product. But you can treat this video as an insight to what it's like to transition between cloth and hard pads more generally, and it may help you make the decision as to whether hard pads are the right choice for you. So let's start by talking about why I bought the Skypad. I recently bought an extremely lightweight mouse, and I praised it in a recent video for feeling like I didn't have anything in my hands while playing. But I wanted to see if I could take this further by also reducing the friction on the mouse too by using a hard pad instead of a cloth pad. I was drawn initially to the Pulsar Superglide pad, which has no flex and is marginally smoother than the Skypad according to fresh reviews, and I've linked his video comparing the two pads in the description below. At the time I bought the Skypad, the Pulsar Superglide wasn't available in the UK, and the Skypad 3.0 seems similar enough in feel and price that I felt it was worth giving a try. My first impressions of the product were a bit disappointing. I don't know what I was expecting, but when I unboxed the Skypad, I was met by a piece of glass that's been optimised for desk space. I guess this is on me for expecting something different, but you're buying a glass pad and that's what you'll get. The only notable thing differentiating this product from a normal pane of glass is the slight texture on the surface, which I understand is there to allow the sensor to get an accurate read on the pad. The texture is similar to most matte mouse shell coatings I've tried, except the Skypad is glass, so it's cold to the touch. The texture is very subtle. So let's talk about speed, feel, and transitioning to glass pads. There's a few stages to this section, so listen to all of it to get the full picture. Initially, I was a little surprised at how the pad didn't feel too different to my cloth pad. The Skypad feels somewhere between the glass skate on cloth pad and PTFE on cloth pad experience, which is positive in my opinion. I should note, not everyone has this easy a time transitioning to glass pads, and some reviewers say it takes them up to a month to adjust to the new surface, and I guess I am lucky to have adjusted initially so quickly. The speed works well for tracking, and the low friction was a particular boon for reactivity situations. However, it took me a day or two to adjust to the pad for flick shots, because the speed of the pad combined with my 32cm sensitivity was difficult to control. First impressions were that, other than lacking a bit of friction, it really wasn't too different of an experience to my G640. So, having just said it didn't feel too different to the cloth pad, as part of a different video I'm working on, I needed to switch back briefly to the cloth pad to run some aim training scenarios. I'm trying to capture the impact cloth and glass pads have on your sensitivity, and I was shocked to realise how sticky the G640 felt in comparison to the Skypad. The cloth pad never felt like that before, but now using the G640 feels like I'm pushing my mouse through a thin layer of mud or custard. I have to really try to make it move, which, as you'll hear in my recent review of the HSK Pro, I was praising it for feeling like there was nothing in my hand when I played, and I was using the cloth pad for that review. It's amazing the difference a new product experience can have on your perspective. This experience reminds me of when you play on a higher frame rate for the first time. You don't always notice the difference straight away, but when you go back to playing at a lower frame rate, it feels much worse than you remember, which is really strange because it's what you were used to only a day or two ago. The G640 now feels too rough and muddy for me to use. The friction on the Skypad is extremely low, which results in immediate speed, both when moving your mouse from stationary, i.e. static friction, and when the mouse is already in motion, i.e. dynamic friction. You can spin on a dime and flick in any direction with smoothness and precision, when you have your sensitivity dialed in, of course. I don't think it's too fast though, and it feels like a very good balance between what glass skates and PTFE skates on a cloth pad have to offer. Glass skates for me feel a little too fast and unwieldy, and PTFE feet on cloth pads feel just a little too slow. The Skypad is somewhere in between, which hits the mark for me. My final point here is that I haven't had an opportunity to test the pad in different weather, and it's winter rolling into spring in the UK, and the temperatures have been cold to mild throughout my time playing on the pad. I'm not sure if it will feel different in the summer. So what impact did the Skypad have on my sensitivity? In terms of performance and sensitivity, Within minutes of use, I was hitting 1 clips in Apex Legends, which isn't too frequent an occurrence for me generally. All of those clips were with tracking or auto-fire weapons, and that's due to the fact that at that point on day 2 of using the new pad, I was not confident using single-fire weapons. The first 2 weeks on the pad, I had to slow things down a bit. I didn't change my sensitivity initially, but lowered it in stages over the course of 2 weeks, from 32cm to 37cm, then eventually down to 43cm. And my flicking became much more reliable the lower my sensitivity got. My tracking also became less slippery, and by that I mean when I had someone in my sights, they stayed locked in. A challenge I had initially with the Skypad with higher sensitivities is that the cursor seemed to wander off target with the slightest of adjustments. And you can see evidence of this with the highlight video I've linked in the description below. This change in sensitivity helped me to skyrocket with reference to overall performance in the first 2 weeks, and the day I reduced my sensitivity down to 43cm, I beat all but 1 or 2 of my high scores in Kovacs, and not by small margins either. In summary, I was running a much slower sensitivity on the much faster pad in the early days, which is not all that surprising, I think. So in week 3 and 4, I started to crank the sensitivity back up again. I found as I became more comfortable with the Skypad at lower sensitivity, I was able to start cranking it back up to a level I was used to on the cloth pad. And I'm currently using a 30cm sensitivity. I've had good success with this with both flicking and tracking scenarios, but I honestly don't know at this point where my sensitivity will end up. I'm currently comfortable on 30cm after 4 weeks. I guess the main takeaway here is you may want to be flexible and adaptable with your sensitivity when it comes to trying products that offer the extremes of speed, and a period of transition is required to perform well on the new surface at your normal sensitivities. So, do mouse feet matter? In the background, you'll see me pushing my mice around with a hairdryer, and this is to show you the speed each mouse mat and mouse feet combination offers. On screen, you'll see which mouse have which feet installed. Hopefully, you can take something useful away from this fun little experiment. Before we jump into the topic more broadly, some reviewers have experienced faster wear down of their mouse feet as a result of using glass pads, and I think it's too soon for me to comment on this, but I can't see any evidence yet on my mouse feet after 4 weeks of use. I've been using a HSK Pro with stock PTFE feet, and now that I have 2 HSK Pros, I put Tiger Ice dots on one of them and noticed an immediate difference in glide on the Skypad. I'm not sure if this is due to the material or the size of the skates that made the difference, so please bear this in mind. It took a few days to adjust to the Tiger Ice dots because they had to break in, but now they've broken in, I really like how they feel. It's a slightly less friction than the stock PTFE feet provided by G Wolves, but note the Tiger Ice dots are much smaller in size too. And the observation I have here is that the slight change in friction go a long way on hard pads. I can't say for certain which mouse feet I prefer, but from my experience of running a few different feet on the pad for a few hours each, I'd suggest if you're worried about a lack of stopping power on a Skypad, you may want to consider using core pads with more surface area. If you like the idea of a really fast glide on this pad, the slick feel of the Tiger Ice dots may be optimal for you. Ultimately, this will come down to personal preference though, and the difference is marginal in reality. The size of the skates, in my opinion, has more of an impact than the brand. If you don't use the technique I'm about to discuss, your choice in mouse feet will matter more. If you do use this technique, I think you'll find mouse feet brands don't make too much of a difference. This mysterious technique is something I've spoken about before and allows you to get additional friction and feedback from the pad. I'm still able to employ my pinky and thumb as additional points of contact with the pad when aiming, although it really isn't as pronounced as I showcased in my recent HSK Pro review. I now just lower my pinky and thumb to the surface of the glass pad when I need the extra friction, and lightly drag the skin of my digits over the surface of the pad. This gives me more feedback from the pad and allows me to anchor the mouse if I need to. I wanted to mention that here because I feel like that technique is commonly used on cloth pads and I'm not sure it is spoken about much on hard pads as a viable technique. I've put a link to Struth Gaming's recent video doing a better job at explaining this in more detail if you are interested. If you've made it this far through the video and I've been able to help you in some way, consider hitting the like button and consider sticking around for future videos by subscribing. Alright, back to the pad. My biggest concern with the Skypad before it arrived was how much noise the pad would make. But when I started to use the pad, I realised that noise wasn't going to be much of a problem. At first, I was conscious of not banging my mouse back down when I had to recenter in the middle of the pad, but with time, I stopped thinking about it so much and it wasn't an issue. My wife is typically quite sensitive to sound in the evenings, due mostly to the fact we have 2 young children, so from my perspective, her lack of complaints here was a big win. Please don't misunderstand me, the Skypad does make more sound than a cloth pad, particularly if the Skypad isn't clean, but it isn't too loud to be a distraction in my opinion. However, if you play on a really low sensitivity, you may end up recentering your mouse more often than I do, and this will of course increase the sound the pad makes, so bear this in mind. Do you need to wear a sleeve on the Skypad? So in my first play session, I didn't wear a sleeve as other users suggest. Instead, I just used my wrist as an anchor when needed, which on the glass surface really anchored my wrist. And when I wasn't anchoring, I just limited the contact my arm made with the mouse pad. And this worked quite well, although it is somewhat unnatural and I don't think this could be considered as an optimal approach to aiming. If you're unsure of what this will feel like for you, I suggest you place your forearm and wrist on a window in your house and swipe your arm and wrist around a bit. It won't feel too dissimilar to the Skypad. Maybe just check the neighbours aren't watching first. The next day, I found an old Lycra thermal sports top that I no longer use and I cut off both sleeves. These worked fine as gaming sleeves, and I can't imagine an actual gaming sleeve has too many features an old sports top couldn't match. I've been pulling the wrist section up over my wrist, but not so far that it interferes with my fingers' range of motion, and I found using the sleeve higher up over my knuckles led quickly to finger and thumb fatigue. Using a sleeve allows me to employ my usual arm and wrist aiming techniques without any skin on glass discomfort. My DIY sleeves cover from just below my thumb joint to my elbow. Someone on Reddit asked if shorter sleeves were available, and if the sleeves you see online don't float your boat, I'd suggest buying a cheap long sleeve Lycra top and cutting the sleeves off to the size you need, and there's a few affiliate links in the description if you're thinking about picking one up. I use the Skypad for work too, and I don't wear a sleeve when I work. I noticed when I place my arm on the edge of the pad and apply the weight of my arm to the pad, it sometimes traps my arm hair under the pad, leading to an uncomfortable plucking feeling when I move the mouse around the pad. It isn't painful, but I mention it for awareness, to help paint the picture of why a sleeve may be beneficial and more comfortable on a hard pad that flexes in the middle. What games is the Skypad suitable for? So I typically play tracking heavy games because it just so happens my main game, Apex Legends, has great gameplay mechanics and has a high time to kill, but I do dabble in Battlefield, Overwatch, Call of Duty and Valorant from time to time. I think the Skypad could be considered as optimal for tracking heavy games and manageable for lower time to kill games like milsims or tactical shooters. I can say this with some confidence because I've seen highlight reel after highlight reel on YouTube of Skypad users ripping up lobbies in various different games, and I've had some success myself in Valorant. I've seen lots of reviews at this point suggesting that the Skypad is high maintenance, and I do agree with this. You'll feel it if there's any debris on your pad, and every speck of dust will feel like sand and be quite scratchy between your mouse and the pad, so a frequent swipe of the surface and your mouse feet are required to keep it clear and smooth. It really isn't that big of a deal though, but you won't want to be that stereotypical gamer eating Doritos at your desk with this pad. To date, I've not used any specific cleaning products. I've just used my forearm with the sleeve to brush off any debris, and I rub the mouse feet on my trousers, and that's been working fine for me. In contrast to a cloth pad that requires an infrequent full wash and dry, the Skypad is more little and often in terms of maintenance, which is good in some ways because you can't neglect it. Neglecting to clean your Skypad will result in an awful experience, genuinely rendering it unusable. So you tend to just give it a swipe whenever something feels scratchy, and this is all that's required. Cloth pads, however, are easy to ignore and maintenance often slips into the next week or month. For this reason alone, the Skypad is really consistent in terms of feel and speed because it's always sparkly clean. While the Skypad is praised as a resilient and durable product, I find I am forced to live differently now that I have one. I can't just mindlessly bang a mug down on my desk, and I'm fearful of dropping my headset on it and causing scratches. All it will take for this pad to become an expensive piece of scrap is a scratch or chip where you don't want it. I don't know how easy this pad is to scratch or break, but my point is you need to be somewhat respectful to a glass pad, whereas my G640 could be yeeted against the wall, dropped on the floor, and a glass of water placed on the edge, and I'd have no concerns. Heavy or light mouse on the Skypad. Immediate observations were how the low friction and the light weight of the mouse I was using seemed to complement the Skypad really nicely. When I posted my short video with the HSK Pro and the Skypad, I received a few comments saying I was some sort of maniac for playing with the HSK on the glass pad, but my theory is that a lighter mouse is better for the sake of having faster glide, less weight and therefore less momentum to contend with, and allows swift movements and changes of direction without needing to subconsciously counter any inertia from a heavier mouse. I'm not sure if there's any merit to this theory, but it makes sense to my simple monkey brain. I've also noticed how a lower friction pad has a side effect of making a mouse feel lighter. I'd also offer that the Skypad may expose any weight balancing issues your mice might have. When I used the Razer Orochi V2 on the Skypad, it felt like the Orochi was trying to barrel roll in my fingertip grip. The speed at which I could move and stop the mouse on the Skypad made it clear the Orochi was top heavy. As a closing statement, my 75g G303 Shroud Edition feels like a much lighter mouse on the Skypad in comparison to how it feels on the G640. You may want to consider that if you are tempted to buy a lighter mouse, maybe a faster pad is an alternative you hadn't yet thought of. So one of the things I'm interested in exploring is whether there's a notable difference between models in hard pads, similar to the differences in the soft pad market. So once again, I've been influenced by fresh reviews. I've ordered the Razer Atlas following his recent review where he describes the pad feeling less sticky and saying that you don't need to wear a sleeve to use it. I will receive the Razer Atlas at the end of March, and when I have enough time on it to give an informed opinion, I will release a video comparing the Atlas to the Skypad. I will keep the pad I prefer and give away the other one to one of my subscribers. And I see this as a way of giving back to my community and allowing someone to try a product that they wouldn't spend their own money on. And also allows me to experiment with ways of growing the channel. So if you'd like to be entered into the giveaway, please like, comment and subscribe and fill out the survey linked in the description below. Is the Skypad value for money? And at this point, coming from a Logitech G640 at a third of the price, I'm actually pretty convinced of the value proposition the Skypad offers. Mostly because I really enjoy using it and therefore I think it is worth what I paid. Note that it was on offer when I bought it and I paid about £95. But I do challenge some of the sales angles often taken with this pad, and to unfairly tarnish you all with the same brush, the vast majority of users of this sort of mouse pad, noting it's mostly peripheral enthusiasts that experiment with enthusiast products, will probably use a different product at some point in the next 12 to 18 months. And I'm a month in and I've already bought another hard pad. So would you be happy to spend £90 to £120 on a cloth pad for the same duration? I think that's an important question to ask yourself before you buy one. Maybe that's a pessimistic view, but you can hopefully see the point I'm trying to make. Buying a product to last you a lifetime when the industry is constantly innovating feels like a strange selling point, especially as there will undoubtedly be a Skypad 4.0, Superglide 2.0 and Razer Atlas innovation released in due course. Maybe some of you will use this pad for the rest of your life, but I expect the majority of us find some of our joy in the gaming hobby by experimenting with different products. Will I keep using the Skypad? Yes, absolutely. At least until I begin testing the Razer Atlas pad. I can't think of any reason why I'd want to use the G640 now that I have the Skypad. The Skypad gave me what I was seeking, and to remind you of what I said at the start of the video, I wanted to see if I could take the HSK Pro light mouse aiming with my eyes experience further by also reducing the friction on the pad, and the Skypad delivered this. I'm very interested to try a cloth speed pad too, maybe an artisan Hien. to see what the difference is. But I'm not going to do that in a hurry because I'm genuinely enjoying the Skypad and I think I will now be a hard pad user for the foreseeable future. Would I change anything about the Skypad? For me personally, after getting past the honeymoon period of playing with an exciting new product, I think I would prefer a touch more control on a pad. And this isn't because I think the Skypad is too fast, I think I would just be a touch more consistent with my flicks with a bit more control. And this is in part why I picked up the Razer Atlas, to see if it performs differently in that regard. This is all very subjective of course, and I will probably not main a cloth pad again now that I've had the hard pad experience, but if the Razer Atlas offers slightly more control, that would be an even better solution for me. The final section of the video, should you buy the Skypad? And if you can't wait for my Razer Atlas review, or if money isn't an issue and you like to try new things, I can't see why you wouldn't give it a go. It is a really different experience to a cloth pad, and I've enjoyed my time with it so far very much. If you like the idea of having ultra low friction and maybe changing the feel of your mice for a fresh experience due to the low friction the pad offers, it may be a game changer for you. However, if money is tight and you need to have confidence in the purchase being right for you, I would suggest researching safer options based on your preferences. I could understand how the different requirements of a glass pad could make them divisive for new users. For example, the requirement for a sleeve, the cleaning, the noise, the respect it commands on your desk. You get the idea. If you need a safer option, I suggest you have a good look around on Reddit and YouTube for recommendations. I hope that's answered your questions. I had a great time making this video and I'll catch you all in the next one.